powerlessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America.
Actually, can you give me a check?
Check 1, 2. You shit 3 times today.
We're all here. Okay, cool. All right, hello and greetings, the damned. Welcome to Pod Damn America, the motherfucking goth socialist podcast for undead pigs. Did you hear about that shit? Undead pigs? What are we talking about? My ex-wife? Huh? I'm Jake Flores. With me is Anders Lee.
Anders Lee here.
And our guest this week from MeanStevie, Nick Hayes. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for letting me crash also.
No problem. MeanStevie, if you're not familiar, if you enjoyed our Street Fight episode, the clip that we sort of played the audio on, then linked to the clip in the show notes, that's a MeanStevie piece. That one went kind of viral. That's a capitalism clip. That's MeanStevie. So you might have seen this guy's work around Twitter and everything. Welcome to the show. I told somebody I was like, I'm going to record with the guy from MeanStevie yesterday, and she went, "Who's MeanStevie?"
He's a dick, is who he is.
So I've got an idea for a mascot. I'm MeanStevie. Here for MeanStevie.
Yeah, just create mass brand confusion. Like,
So, are you enjoying your time in New York, Nick?
I am. It's lovely as always. I love coming out here. It's like my 3rd time here.
Yeah.
I just end up eating pizza basically for every meal.
Yeah. You brought home an artichoke pizza, which means you're officially a New Yorker in the way that like you travel into like Mordor and you get stabbed with a poison knife or something, and you're in Lord of the Rings. You can't leave.
Have you been to Times Square yet?
I have no intention of
You're not going to get MeanStevie up on the big board?
We are thinking about getting some billboards in Detroit, though, actually.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm. But no, not in Times Square. Probably can't afford that.
Get the
Piston Center? You're gonna
we're gonna sponsor a sports team.
Yeah.
Get the big red M&M to talk about anarchism and shit. How
the red and black M&Ms.
Yeah, the Red Brown Alliance. That's the M&M is the real horseshoe theory. You know what I'm saying? He's a Nazi on the inside.
Whoa.
I don't know. Anyways, if you guys didn't hear, the great news is that the undead are real now. It's basically a study that happened this week where some scientists, I will look up the
this is an extremely like this show news story.
Yeah, we have to plug in some spooky shit up here at the top. Some brain functions may be restored after death. Pig study suggests. This is in medical news today. A team of researchers has restored some brain function to a pig that died 4 hours earlier. The findings challenge pre-existing notions of post-mortem brain functionality and open up new possibilities for studying the human brain. Very cool.
All this is going to be used for is to like reanimate dead people to do like service work.
That's the thing. New technology under like, quote unquote late capitalism has no point except for the profit motive. So this is really just like sorry to bother you shit. I guess spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie yet.
Yeah, you're gonna like order food and like a zombie shows up at your door. Like,
yeah, about like a pig man.
Pig man.
Oh, it's like a Porky the Pig Man. He's not wearing pants because it's against their ways or whatever. He only wears a shirt, and they
have their whole own culture.
Then they bring you, Amazon shit or whatever. I don't know.
You get a barbecue restaurant, you get a little preview of what the ribs are like. Open up the tummy,
They say
eat your waiter.
They say that human flesh tastes like pork. They if you watch that show, Larry,
because we eat slop.
It's because we're pigs, baby. We're pay pigs. That guy Larry Charles, that Netflix documentary where he like went and asked like warlords and shit about just about
Doing
comedy
bits,
and stuff. And they interviewed General Butt Naked, who's this like African warlord who who would run into battle naked with an army of naked children. And he was a cannibal. He was like the Thens on Game of Thrones, and he would just like eat people after he killed them and shit. And he asked him, what does it taste like? And he was like, yeah, it tastes like pork ribs. But that's consistent with research from way back where people would interview cannibal tribes, and they would say, yeah, humans taste like pig. That's why they call it, when they serve humans, they call it long pig.
Long pig.
Yeah, just big fucking long pig or whatever. So I guess that they're kind of saying in this article that we can reignite a pig brain, pretty much the same thing as a human brain, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're in hell.
I don't really see anything that unethical about eating another person if they're okay with it.
Holy
Shit.
If it's consensual.
Yeah, if it people will often say, I don't care what you do with me when I die. Why not use them for nutrients?
All right, Anders. Whichever one of us dies first, the other one eats.
All right.
The one that we'll get a pact in writing.
Yeah.
And we'll form a death pact where one of us has to eat each other, and then we'll do a podcast about what it tasted like.
Yeah.
What do you think I would taste like?
Cigarettes.
Yeah.
A nice smokiness to this food.
Right.
Yeah. And then if I'm eating Anders' skull, I'm like, wow, it tastes like kratom. I'm getting kind of
Fucking
a
powder in this shit. Yeah.
Make sure to eat a lot of pork and kratom.
Yeah. Anyways, it's day fucking 3 million of the Mueller report thing. It's happening as we speak, so there's not much to report on, but there's also not much to report on because there's not much to report on.
Did you see the redacted? It's just pages of just black, and it's redacted, and people are like it's out, baby.
Yeah, the thing that's so frustrating about the redacted part is that because there's all this redacted shit, that means that for a lot of people that are diehard Mueller people, the story's not over because what's under the redacted
It's
part?
never gonna end.
Yeah, I'm waiting for text from my dad being did you see the new report?
My thing with this whole redacted report is that Attorney General William Barr, right? Bill Barr. What if it was Attorney General Bill Burr? That'd be cool. And then all the redacted parts are just cuss words. It's just him saying cunt all the time. That's what I'm imagining this is all about.
Fucking collusion.
Yeah, that's the voice.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So this is going to be a horrible day on Twitter, but this will probably be this will come out a week afterwards. So yeah. Nothing has changed.
Yeah, it will be the same.
Just going to call it now.
There will be no evidence. People will be saying there's evidence.
As long as we're talking about fucked up animal shit, what is this thing that happened with the bees?
Taiwan, a woman was, I believe, in a wind tunnel or something.
She was doing shit at her parents' grave, or because it's these bees love graveyards, I guess.
Wait,
or something.
was she trying to get a snack? Was she kind of hungry, trying to eat her parents?
Right, she heard our podcast.
Yeah, right. I guess she was cleaning their grave, and there was a gust of wind, and it blew a bunch of bees in her fucking eye.
Yeah, it just went in. They just slipped in there.
Yep.
And they were feeding off of her tears.
Oh my god.
Right. But they got him out, and they almost blinded her. But it was like insanely precise surgery.
I feel like those bees were having the Matrix experience where they're just living in those little juicy containers or whatever, and they're just somehow sustained by that. You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's gotta be weird for the bee.
Yeah. That's what I immediately thought about was what was going through those bees' heads.
That's probably they got it made. They don't have to worry about getting swat. It's a nice little insular place to live.
They're like the fat people from WALL-E, on that spaceship. They're just all of our shit is taken care of.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the future liberals want for bees. Just coddled.
Just bee welfare. Yeah.
They don't have to fly anywhere. They just directly are fed tears.
Did they kill the bees after remove, or they just flew right out of there?
With prejudice,
escaped?
I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
I would imagine. Damn. Yeah.
I once had a mosquito in my ear.
Ooh.
And that was very
dude.
unpleasant.
We're living in there, or just buzzing around?
Buzzing around. It was, I could hear it, so I got it out pretty quickly, but it was very unpleasant. A lot of blood.
I really hate the stories about like spiders, they're like a spider nest was found in this woman's temple and like 800 spiders crawled out or whatever. It's like that shit. When I was younger, I was like, damn man, you got to really look out for like spiders just nesting in your head and stuff.
Yeah.
That's nightmare fuel, man. So Nick, why don't you tell us a little bit about the work you're doing over at MeanStevie?
Yeah, totally. So, MeanStevie is a project that my partner Naomi and I started around like a year and a half ago. We did the like original campaign video for like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and then we did some stuff for like Kanyela Ng, and kind of went around the country doing videos for political campaigns. And that was like a really interesting experience. Like we had like, you know, some success with Alexandria, and we wanted to kind of try and find a way to build power for socialism, for like leftism, through culture as well, like not just kind of through the electoral process. And so that's kind of the idea behind MeanStevie is creating entertainment, not only that's like through a worker-owned model, but that sort of advances these ideas around like what is socialism and like what is the relationship between the owning class and the working class, and sort of laying that out to people in like a very basic, like visceral way people understand.
Yeah, I think that we probably have a pretty similar approach to the cultural stuff, because like I like these videos seem to be like kind of real entry level and basic and like bite size, and that's kind of the point of making, you know, what, you know, you could describe almost as like propaganda or whatever, you know, for a good reason, obviously.
It's totally propaganda. Like everything is propaganda. So it's just, we're honest about it. Like here's our perspective. Like this is what it is. And so we're doing all these like little short videos. We're you know, kind of like a Now This or sort of thing, but with like little comedy skits, and like we've kind of thought about it like College Humor and Now This if they weren't like super shitty.
Yeah.
You know? And
you mean like a video that's about something good and not invading Venezuela because it's a quote unquote dumpster fire?
Yeah, or that's like funded like a sponsored ad by the Saudis or, you know, something like that. So we're just releasing all these kind of short videos now as like a proof of concept, because we basically use the profit from the videos we did for electoral people to like fund all these different little sketches. And so now we're trying to raise money to actually do some like longer form TV shows, like movies, reality shows, animated shows, all that stuff on like a sort of streaming platform, like similar to Netflix. So right now we just have like a website that's kind of talks about what we're trying to do, talks about the fundraiser, but the end goal is like by the end of this year to have a streaming platform up and have all the shows and movies and stuff on there.
Cool.
Yeah, I love it.
And you said you're worker owned. Like, what are the nuts and bolts of how that functions, and how do you envision that possibly playing out one day over the rest of the economy?
Yeah, so the co-ops rule, and I've learned a lot about co-ops in the last like 2 years, and basically our structure is there's a lot of different types of co-ops. I've learned there's like multi-stakeholder co-ops, there's like all these different sorts of things. We're just pursuing a pretty straightforward worker ownership model, which is anybody who's like a full-time employee at Means Media within a certain time period, like a year or two, gains access to full voting rights and a share of the company's profit. So it would be like if we were to hire somebody and they come like after 2 years, they would then have the same voting power in the company as like me or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
And that's a way to just like run a more efficient business. Like I don't want to be a small business owner, like, you know, and like it's a better way to run a business, and it's a socialist way to run a business. And having that sort of democracy baked into a company like allows us to call out like people who don't have that, right? And it's like, to me, it's sort of this next, like right now we're seeing all this really positive energy around unionizing and digital media, and that's really great, but like unions can't prevent layoffs. Like unions can't prevent firings or necessarily control the sort of content that's going out. So to us, this is like kind of the next stage for digital media. Like democratic ownership is like actually having them be worker cooperatives and putting some of that decision-making power with the employees.
Yeah, totally. The other thing, just in regards to culture, I want to touch on, because we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, but something I think is important that's sort of new is that, okay, so, you know, if you understand the sort of Marxist theory of the superstructure and everything, then you kind of have this idea that, like, culture is a product of society, and liberals are idiots because they have it the other way around. They think that if you change the culture, then you change society, and that's why every liberal is kind of
like obsessed with talk shows.
Yeah, and like representation in like fucking TV shows that who gives a shit about, and like don't make jokes about this and that or whatever because they have the arrows mixed around. They think that like the culture and the art that you create then changes society, whereas like a good Marxist is kind of go like, no, like if you fix society, then there won't be these cultural things that you hate because these are the symptoms of the problem. And that's kind of where I land. But I think that a lot of leftists, especially because they're going off of like texts that are from the past and not from an era where like the internet makes everything really instant. They have it a little bit behind the times, and I think now that there's an argument that could be made that there is sort of a power in propaganda and in cultural ideas, and in our really fast ability to shift ideas now. It's just that it's not through fucking Wonder Woman being Puerto Rican or some shit. It's through more like actually getting proper ideas through pieces like this and stuff like that.
Yeah. Or that the superstructure is still part of the base. There's a material component that goes into producing any form of media, and that that like as you're saying, the structure of a company producing media matters, and that coincides with other movements and things happening in the economy and the political world.
Yeah, and I think like you were saying, Jake, like with the advent of mass media, like cable news, and then now with the internet, it's like, yeah, we have to, I think, alter that kind of analysis a little bit, because I do think that, yeah, like liberals have it wrong. They do think culture is like the way to power, which if they're trying to preserve capital is like kind of true, but I think that as like a sort of anti-capitalist movement, right, or like a socialist movement, they're both like equally powerful in that like we have to make strides in both, and we have to sort of explain what we're doing in the culture and stuff like that, because it's like who's like the main outputs of culture and under capitalism right now are basically digital media companies that are just funded by people who don't give a shit if it's profitable necessarily. Like, so they're just cranking out whatever they want to crank out that advances the agenda of whoever owns it.
Right.
And then you have studios in LA that are run by like 6 guys that have been making shitty movies for like 60 years now, and they're like highly misogynistic. They're like often racist. They're definitely classist, and they're individualistic and they're militaristic. Like there's all these different components about the sort of like cultural products being created under capitalism. And so even, obviously, even as a co-op, we exist under capitalism, but it's like we're freed up just a little bit more than everybody else to kind of talk about whatever the fuck we want. And like we have an ideology, and we're clear about that. Like in the same way Fox News is like, we want fascism. It's like we want socialism and like communism and anarchism.
Yeah, and the Fox News thing is interesting because like a lot of people will tell you that like like a lot of leftists will tell you that there's no such thing as a bad outlet, and like these things do not dictate culture. But then it's like, case in point, like Fox News did something to society. Like they've definitely led to
some brain rot for sure.
Yeah.
And like some violence on people who are already marginalized and stuff. Like,
yeah, and cable news, like the rest of them are all very guilty in shaping like ideology on some level, and like other big platforms like your alt-right weirdos, your Jordan Petersons and Joe Rogans and stuff like that. I mean, like on some level there is some change that's happening there. So I think it's like way more complex of a question. And I also think that another good example, like if you don't think that this is possible, I mean, just look at the fucking Overton window and how fast it's been shifted. Sure, that happened through like electoral stuff and like Bernie Sanders and AOC and all this shit, but I don't know, I think about this sometimes because like I was at one point recently was working on like an event with some sex workers, and like was sort of talking to them about their specific problems and like how to solve them through doing like we were going to try to do like an event and make media and stuff like that. And I was talking about this culture, society superstructure thing or whatever, and somebody brought up a really good point. One of these sex workers was like, no, that's actually like that's we need that a lot because one of the biggest problems with that line of work is stigma, and stigma is a huge cultural thing. And if you look at like, you know, how the perception of like LGBTQ, like queer people, gay people, and everything has changed over like the last, you know, 10 or 20 years. I mean, that didn't happen because of like a fucking, you know, Harvey Milk or something like alone. I mean, it also was like highly cultural. Like,
yeah, it was like
characters on TV and shit
exactly,
like that.
like purposeful infiltration of culture and like so I totally agree with those people. It's like you have to be doing both, and like we have to be kind of on, like, I look at MeanStevie as sort of like on the edge of like normalizing language around socialism and communism and anarchism, because like most people are still freaked the fuck out by the word communism, but it's like, it's cool, it's fine, you know, like it's actually just like workers owning the means of production, so it's cool. But so I think it's like rehabilitating some of this language that for so long has been like scary to people because of the Red Scare, because of the crackdown on socialism. So I think that is kind of where our heads are at, is like really rehabilitating like the furthest left edge of socialism, so all of it becomes more palatable.
Right. Either scary or like extremely boring. Like this would be, I mean, it is impossible to have like a revolution or a socialist movement without mass consciousness. Like 10 years ago, there's nothing. Like you can't expect, like the best you can do is tell people go on YouTube and watch a 3-hour David Harvey lecture. Like that's not going to happen, you know? Yeah,
and it's like, as a guy who, like, you know, I read some books, but I don't read that many books. You know what I mean? Like, who has the time? But,
overrated. Yeah.
Truly.
Listen to podcasts instead.
There you go. Just listen to podcasts. But it's like, I want to like watch a fucking 2-minute video and be like, cool, I understand socialist feminism, at least at its like most core kind of thing, and maybe now I want to go read more about it or watch some other shit about it. And so it's kind of like, it's like if we're trying to just like create pamphlets and stuff like that for people, it's like people aren't going to read that shit, but like people do watch video because it's like an insane medium that just like goes into your brain and like sits there for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I think that if we really want to get the message out about socialism and anarchism, in order to reach our most probably high functioning and highly effective players in society, what we need to do is sort of rewrite the Everlast hit "What It's Like," because apparently Pete Buttigieg, and this is the quote, Pete Buttigieg is asked what song describes his life, and he mentions Everlast, What It's Like, as one that doesn't necessarily describe his life, but describes, quote, the way we should come to politics. This is like the wonderkin of the Democratic Party right now. It's so fucking funny.
What would that song be like? I seen a worker strike. I seen a soldier revolt.
Dude, you can do this with this song in your head all day. I used to do it when I first moved to New York, and I was just thinking about stand-up a lot, and I wrote a spoof of it that was like, I've seen a bad man kill. I've seen a good man bomb. I've seen a girl write for Guy Code just to pay the bills. I fucked it up, but it's like somewhere in there. It's very refillable. It's a very dumb song where he's just a guy sauntering around a spooky neighborhood and seeing things and being moved by them.
Yeah, I mean, Pete's deep, man. You know, what can you say? Yeah. Like, I can't say his last name, but, you know, he's a deep guy.
Yeah.
I've seen a boot edge.
Right. It's boot edge.
I feel like that's going to hamper his fucking campaign almost more than anything. It's just nobody can say his goddamn last name. It's like, Buttigieg?
Yeah, well, I mean, but I think the fact that people are talking about it and having this little, you know, cute little, how do we say it, is like kind of working in his favor, you know?
Fuck.
Yeah, something about people with like the worst names ever is that they all want to become substitute teachers and they want to run for office. I don't know why you wouldn't just sit that out.
Right.
Immediately.
It's this, and he has this sort of self-satisfied smirk about him when people are struggling with his name.
Did you see that like baby face picture of him that was on the cover of, I don't know what magazine it was. It might have been Rolling Stone or something, but it was like they like buffed his face up. He looked like Eric Wareheim, where he was just like a shiny boy, like just like gleaming, like looked like a plastic dude. It was so weird.
The Botox Buttigieg. He's
there you go. That's how we take him down.
Yeah. He's been taking all of his money and spending it on Botox.
Yeah, you really should. Like, I get no pleasure out of people struggling with Anders. Like, it's a curse on my life. You know, it shouldn't be seen as a fun little game.
Yeah. These people are just insane, like narcissistic masochists. I think. You got to be kind of a ding dong to run for president, I think. Let's see.
Especially in a field this big. It's like there's like 80 people running for president right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do something else, Pete.
What else should we talk? There's a couple other weird things that happened in the news this week. The Chairman Dow is a thing again. He's like referring he's referring to himself as Chairman Dow, Peter Dow.
He's referring to himself as Chairman Dow?
Yeah, he's like come full circle.
He's
now.
like a Maoist now?
Now he's like winking about it and shit.
Hell yeah.
He's on our side now. Dow.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well,
fair weather friend.
Well, what he said is that he's like was just he kind of admitted to just being a hired gun. Like he said that originally he saw himself as sort of a liaison between what was at the time the Kerry campaign in 2004 and like the broader progressive movement, and then that turned into the Hillary Clinton campaign, and he was just kind of doing his job, and now sees himself as just like wanting to get Trump out of office, and like a rational person sees Bernie Sanders as a very good way to do that.
Yeah, and it's very troubling for all of his reply people. But I was thinking about him a lot this week, and I tweeted a joke about like starting I want to start a goth band called Dow House, and I guess I haven't thought about Peter Dow in a long time, and I hadn't really like put this together, but he used to be like a DJ. Like,
really?
Yeah.
I thought it was like a jazz band. Like, I mean, and that's what if he wants to bring the Republic together, that's where he's going to make the most impact, is doing some cover band shit, like going around.
Well, you were saying he was a saxophone guy?
I mean, maybe I'm like mixing him and Bill, but I think he was doing like jazz, like he was. I think it was a jazz cover band that he was like pulled from to do like political work for the DNC.
Wasn't he also like in a Lebanese military conflict, or am I thinking of somebody else?
He grew up in like a war zone is something he refers to a lot.
Okay. The 2016 primary?
Well,
Heyo.
folks, he's 2 years old.
Yeah, he's a baby Dow.
Yeah. But anyway, back to topic a little bit. So you're from Detroit, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Not from there, but I live there.
You live there, okay. Yeah. Has that inspired any of the work you're doing?
Fuck yeah, because Detroit is totally a city ravaged by capital. Like, on my street, there's like 3 other people who live in homes, and all the other homes are empty, or they're being bought up by this like developer that's buying houses and then renting them for like way more than anybody would ever have a mortgage for. So,
sure.
I mean, it's just you're completely in Detroit surrounded by like our society is failing people miserably, and like the air pollution is a huge issue in Detroit. There's like all these insane industrial sites, like the river is completely fucking polluted. Like there's no escaping, just like people being screwed by like a totally exploitative system. So it's like I also like Detroit for other reasons that are like not negative, but it's like doing anti-capitalist content out of there feels very right.
Are people like receptive to it?
I mean, there's like a lot of different communities in Detroit. You know what I mean? Like, so I think in the film community, people have been receptive. Like, Detroit used to actually put out more film per day than Hollywood did.
Wow.
And there was this whole studio ad infrastructure there that wound up kind of getting demolished when like White Flight happened and all that sort of stuff. So, like there is this kind of history of it there. And so like we kind of want to revive some of that like presence of film and entertainment, because it's like cheap as hell to shoot in Detroit. You know what I mean? As opposed to like going to LA where everything is like if you go into a liquor store in LA, they have filming prices like next to the counter, you know, and it's like everybody's so jaded and used to it. Where in Detroit, people are still like excited to be a part of like a TV show or stuff like that. So there's a lot of reasons why I like it, but it's always overcast and the air quality is very bad.
I like that. There is kind of something to like this to producing media now, where like I was talking about this with the street fight guys a little bit or whatever, but like rather than us all have to fucking pack it up and go to LA or New York and like, not be able to live here essentially, and compete in an unlivable situation, now because of all this mass communication stuff creating like, it's sort of destroying the monoculture and destroying like a lot of gatekeepery sort of situations. Like it seems like we can sort of do this stuff out of Detroit or
anywhere. I mean, it's like I'm tired of, as like a person who's working in entertainment, it's like I'm tired of having to like run my ideas by some fucking schmuck. You know what I mean? And like change my shit around so that some executive or whatever thinks it's like a good idea for their platform or whatever. It's like there, like you just said, there's so much gatekeeping, and to just like, and it's none of it is like, it's not like they add any value. Like they don't know what the fuck they're doing, and they make bad TV and bad entertainment. So it's like, if we just cut them out of the process, like we can just make the raw, like good ass shit, you know, and like
something that's been kind of like troubling me a little bit about thinking about this sort of stuff, though, is that like because when I talk to other people that work in entertainment, it's I feel like they're a little bit gaslit, and I don't blame them, because so we used to have the monoculture, right? And if you're like a comedian like me and Anders, then you were trained on a system where like your goal was to sort of get on these huge platforms, get on like Saturday Night Live and fucking Late Night and all this stuff,
right?
And what happens is when you get those jobs, if you do really well, you can get one of these highly sought after jobs, right? And so there's 1% of these jobs, there's 99% of people that are in competition for those jobs. And because there's such a huge stratification there, everyone lives in squalor until they hit the jackpot and they get like, you might get this huge payoff thing, right? And so everyone's kind of fucked, but the prize is really big. But even often when you get those jobs, though, you don't make that much money. You kind of make a living wage or whatever. And what's happening now through like this Patreon thing and like everything being flattened out and the internet just changing the way you monetize stuff is that now those jobs don't pay as much anymore because people aren't watching TV and stuff. And so like a lot of comedians will tell me like, they're worried about like this podcasting stuff because it's like, well, there's like so much of it. There's like a glut of media. Like, what am I going to start a show about? Politics? There's already a fucking show about politics, right? And you kind of look at them and go, well, you're still thinking that you need to be the biggest show of all time, but what you can be as a fucking entertainer now is somebody who has like 10, 20,000 fans.
Yeah, find your audience. And then, that's like a huge part of MeanStevie, even that we talked about, is like all these different podcasts have different audiences. Like there's obviously some overlap, but it's like people who listen to Chapo are going to be different than people who listen to Street Fight or people who listen to you guys. And it's like by centralizing that content, it is a way for like, oh, if I like Chapo, I'm going to go watch this Chapo video. Oh, what's Street Fight? I'm going to watch Street. It's like, it's a way to draw people into other content.
But as someone who's making propaganda to try to get a political message across, do you find that limiting? Because like I feel like the goal would still be like, how do we get on like the fucking national stage with this stuff?
I mean, it's like Fox News played one of our videos on air the other day.
That's true.
So it's like, that's like the biggest cable news network, and they gave us free advertising.
All right, listen, comedians, you heard it here. No longer are you trying to get on Conan. No longer are you writing these packets for late night. What you got to do is just get on Fox News. Just piss off Fox News enough.
Yeah, come on MeanStevie. We'd love to have you, and we'll fucking trigger a bunch of conservatives with whatever you say.
You will be in front of tons of people that are actively watching, what they're like. They're actually paying attention to what they're watching. My friend Sarah June did one of your videos, and she got retweeted by AOC. Is that the one they played on Fox News?
Yeah, that's the one they played. Yeah, Sarah June is like,
congratulations,
very
Sarah.
critical to MeanStevie. She rules.
Yeah, that's such a good credit for a comedian now. Is hated by Fox News. If you're in LA, go check her out. She's got a cool show. It's called High Priestess. Well, then, okay. I mean, I guess that makes sense. I mean, on some level, then, like, this stuff is getting on the national stage. I just worry sometimes about socialism
talking to ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, the problem is being like a bubble, I guess.
I mean, and that's why it's like, I agree. And I think that's why a lot of the videos we're trying to do are like so entry level, is so that it is like, you can kind of come in with a more liberal or like social democrat kind of perspective, like not even knowing necessarily like what socialism is, and kind of be like, oh shit, like it would be pretty weird if I was against workers having power, and some of those kinds of things. But I mean, the goal is to build like a mass media project ourselves that is worker owned and democratic. And I really think if we're putting out worker owned entertainment, it will be so far and above better than what's being produced by like Amazon. Like Amazon just released a whole statement saying they won't put out anything that's controversial. So like nothing that is like nothing that could be perceived as controversial. So it's like,
What does that even mean?
it just means like we're not gonna say anything about Israel or whatever. But it's like,
no, Amazon, you make our show about the woman with the bees in her eyes. It's got legs, I think.
but it's like, I think if, you know, we exist under market capitalism, and so if we are able to produce a better product, which I truly believe we are, because the left has all the artists, has all the comedians, has all the actors, has all the good directors who for so long been having to work through these corporate structures. Like if we just work for ourselves and work with each other, then we become the media, you know what I mean? And we can just do these things ourselves. Like even doing that AOC video was just like a wake up call to me that it's like, we can just do this shit. Like we can just do this, make it happen, and like then it exists. You know what I mean?
And the old system is there's starting to be some cracks where like a lot of people who, you know, traditionally the way you make it, I guess, in comedy is like you get a late night spot, and we know so many people who have had like not only late night spots, like half hours on Comedy Central, and they're still like, you know, working for moving companies
Right.
and shit.
I mean, when you were
like-
a kid and you watched that shit, it was like, oh, everybody who's on TV is like a millionaire, or like is like making good money or whatever. And
TV as a medium is like this fucking dying mothership. It's like this crashing thing that used to be like all
Zeppelin just exploding in the air.
Because it still is the hollow shell. It's still shaped like what it used to be, which is the fucking huge thing that everyone watched and everyone had the same reference point for everything. But people are stopped not watching it anymore, so it's like it's paying less. It's, you know, there's less funding going into it. All the shit that's coming out on it is kind of bad, and it's like it's just an echo of a thing that used to be, and that's part of the monoculture being split into a million different directions. But it's like it's just going away, and I think like I don't know. I mean, the cable news thing. It's like cable news and sports are like the two biggest things.
Yeah, but we're gonna do sports and we're gonna do gaming shit. Like we're gonna just start taking over some of these more popular entertainment markets and
Interesting.
deliver them
That's cool.
ourselves.
What's the angle going to be on sports? Are you going to have Dave Zirin?
Well, I like that.
Don't wanna give away the-
Yeah, I'm not. We haven't like
Sure.
confirmed anything with him yet, but like that sort of perspective
Yeah.
of like, let's talk about like how, you know, in addition to kind of covering sports and enjoying that for what it is, like let's also talk about like how exploitive like building stadiums is, or like the Olympics, like how that's just a giant fucking ruse, and you know, all these kinds of things. Like let's add like that extra dimension to sports, so that's like we can watch it and it's like cool, whatever, it exists, might as well enjoy it, have fun, watch baseball or whatever.
Yeah.
But we can also like talk shit about like the manager who's been doing this like poor labor practices
Yeah.
or whatever.
Oh, cool! I like it.
Something I think a lot about when in terms of messaging with socialism, communism, Marxism especially, is how do you get over the hurdle of what happened in the 20th century with, you know, Stalin and Mao and some of these governments. Like, do you have an idea for like a unified message for confronting that question, or maybe your personal view, or like how do you see that in terms of like creating propaganda that gets people into socialism without alienating them?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I come from a more kind of anarchist perspective personally, where it's like I really want society to be horizontally organized. Like I want it to be like, you know, community run. I understand that some services have to be provided through some sort of kind of national collectivization, but I think like the distinction I try to draw with like Stalin and sort of like the Russian Revolution and things is like the difference between authoritarianism and kind of democracy, and like democratic socialism and democratic communism. And obviously like socialism is inherently democratic. Like we don't need to say democratic socialism. Socialism is democratic, but
Yeah.
I think that's
Well,
why
that's-
that's why we've even been able to rehabilitate socialism, is because we started saying democratic in front of it, and
Right.
people were like, "Oh, not authoritarian."
But that's the thing, is that you're right. Socialism is inherently democratic, but that kind of goes against this like hardwired and long told story in America. That's like, you know, you notice when right wing people talk about like certain wars and stuff, they say like it was a war where it was, you know, democracy versus socialism or something like that. They don't say it was capitalism versus
Yeah.
socialism.
But it's like, but how much? The biggest things that I would say to that is
Like it's
two,
dumb, but it's ideologically just
Right, but it's
hardwired.
easy to take apart because it's like, one, okay, under capitalism, which is free, we're all so free, you know, just free as fuck. Like, how much control do you have over your daily life? Like, you have none. You have to go to your job, you have to make money, you have to pay all your fucking bills, you have to like, you're doing so much just to maintain
See,
in
that
the
I
system.
think is like that's like the good end point, because like you know, I mean, so if you look at this fractured world, right? There's no monoculture. There's all these fucking different floating pieces. I like think about this in terms of 2016 a lot of the time, because that's when like there was like this presidential race where all these people were running on old school rules that applied to the world before the big fracture and everything changed or whatever. And so, you know, this guy Trump comes along and he's the first person to kind of go, oh, like, yeah, just a second. So, you know, Trump comes along to this new landscape, and whether by design or he just falls ass backwards into the situation, he sort of like realizes that he can sort of energize this base of people that are very resentful, and the things that they're resentful of the fact that they're
most people.
Yeah, you're in America. You're told the American dream's supposed to work. You're middle class. Your life's still fucked. You have no money. And then what do? You go. You tell them this is because of. And then what he does is tell them it's because of immigrants and Muslims and all sorts of other stuff. But conversely, like the same thing could happen if you go to people who are just fucking mad because they got fucked over by the American dream, and you go, this is happening. And for the correct answer, which is because of capitalism and all these things that we understand to be true, that we understand to be the ills of society. So like that right there could be, I don't know, I guess. I
mean, yeah, you have to use the economic resentments people have, but it's also like even like we're going to release a video a few weeks from now about how there's no such thing as the middle class. It's like I worked in advertising and marketing for a couple of years, and it is 100% the product of like marketing and advertising. The whole idea of the middle class, like having a yard, all of that is to make you feel like you're closer to the owning class, and therefore like you are a different class, but you are a working class person, and there is an inherent conflict between yourself and the owners of society. So it's like much more politically useful to us to kind of break down some of these barriers we impose on ourselves. Like, I am a lower middle class. It's like, no, you're not. You're working class.
Right.
Like, I'm upper middle class. It's like, what the fuck does that even mean? It's like, do you own factories or not? You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's one way. It's a pretty binary thing where that illusion is there for a reason. I say all this stuff about like that being the big thing you can probably pull off because we'll touch on this briefly or whatever, but like fucking Bernie went on Fox News and had a town hall, and he crushed that thing I'm describing. It turned out to be observably true, in that a bunch of Fox News people went, oh yeah, we would like all this fucking healthcare and shit he's talking about. I mean, the math on that's pretty simple to me. It's also very funny because they fucking took a poll at the end of that thing. Would you vote for this person for president, this person for president, whatever? And I think it was like, Trump got 40% and then Bernie got 47%, but they put him second. They put Bernie second and they put Trump on top just to try
like
to...
2016 all over again with like the delegate count bullshit.
Yeah, dude, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Do you remember that shit? Like when they were that was wild. Like that still stands out to me as just like, you cannot trust these people as far as you can throw them. Like,
it's insane to me that anyone saw that. I guess people just didn't understand it because, like, they did. I think a lot of people don't understand the superdelegate system, so they were like, what's it called? Self-fulfilling prophecy. Like they were like, Hillary's already winning, therefore Hillary is who I should vote for, or whatever. And that's kind of what they were trying to get away with. Just a note on what you were just describing in terms of there's no middle class. Something was kind of funny happened recently where I shared an article on Facebook. I'll link it in the comments, I guess, since I'm talking about it or whatever. But something came up. An article, I think, in Vulture came out about the side hustles of musicians, and I shared it because I think it's a really important thing to talk about. And my personal philosophy on this, which I'll encapsulate pretty quickly because I'll beat it to death in other episodes, I'm sure, is that as entertainers and people that make shit and creatives, we need to talk about the fact that we have jobs and that we are not professionals, because if we don't, then what we do is we contribute to the idea of the meritocracy, and what happens is that a rich person slides right past all of us without having to had fucking delivered pizzas or waited tables or whatever all day, and they get to claim that they competed against us fairly, and then they successfully, well, they're good at what they do. That's why they have a job, right? So it's why it's like, no, I think like a thing you can do as a creative or as a fucking artist is go, hey, fuck you guys, it's cool, it's good that I have a job, and if we all self-identify as workers, the person who isn't a worker now is outed by negative space, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this article that was great. It was it's just all about like these bands I like. This person from Charlie Bliss talked about working in a grocery store and all this stuff. But they happened to mention the guy from Waves, right? And the guy from Waves, if you don't know, is like a landlord, but he keeps trying to pass it off as if he's like, oh, this is like my hustle. Like, I rent this apartment out to somebody.
Very cool, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. And they mentioned him in it, and then
It's like delivering pizzas. It's like Domino's.
Just collecting rent, you know.
Yeah, and he like shared, he
Fucking rough.
screenshotted this article and shared it in his Instagram live, and he was like, yeah, see, like some people took this in way the fucking wrong direction and tried to take me down over it, but Vulture gets that I'm like, I'm a fucking working man or whatever, and it's like, this is why people need these basic explainers of like Marxism and how this stuff works, because that is literally, you are literally the one thing that is
Yeah, you are the
defined.
owning class. Yeah.
that is how this works. You are not the fucking worker in that situation.
I think it's also like we all, and I have a hard time with this too. It's like people who are who we see as successful or like who have risen to the top under capitalism. Like it's not merit based. It's nepotistic generally. Like it's like they are the child of somebody. It's not like they're. So it's like the people who are most elevated in our society, whether they're entertainers or musicians, aren't like the good ones. You know what I mean? It's like our culture is shit because there's no sort of democracy or like worker kind of ownership in any of that process. It's just like, oh, my son started a band, like, cool, let's get him on the label.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They're all lying too, and it's like, you know what? I have a lot of friends that are openly rich, and I fucking love them. I think that's great. But what's usually what you get is a fucking story that's retroactively engineered by a famous person about how they like worked so hard when they lived in New York for 2 years before their career took off or whatever. I think Lady Gaga has a story about how she worked in a coffee shop for like a year, and you're supposed to read it, and you're supposed to go, wow. And you're like, I still work in the fucking coffee shop.
I mean, that's like literally delusion. That's like just being a rich person and not understanding the working class experience, though, and being like, I got a flavor. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, you did not. Like, were you evicted multiple times because you couldn't pay rent? Like, well, then you don't know what the fuck it's like,
Then you really might know what it's like.
Well, yeah, I think
if it happens to you.
To collect the rent.
Yeah. You ride King of the Beach, and then you take Instagram, and then you get really sad, and then... But then you really might know what it's like to be in Waves.
That's what they should do, is write songs about being misunderstood landlords.
Yeah. We should write a neoliberal what it's like.
Yeah. I mean, that really is like that flies in the face of this idea that, if you make a lot of money, it's because you work hard. Like, it is not even a job. Like, you do nothing. Like, if you don't even have to do the maintenance shit. You can get other people to do that. Like, you literally just have your name attached to a thing and collect money from it.
Yeah, but this is like a concept that like we could use something like MeanStevie to get out there, because it's like real basic. I'm a believer because I'm fucking from Texas and I had to work real hard to get myself deprogrammed and stuff. I do like hanging out with all these intellectual fucking psychos that I know in the dirtbag left, and
of course,
hang out with fucking Crispin and Sean KB and listen to them talk about history. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, this is interesting.
I don't know any of this. Yeah,
you're insane, But I think that like a lot of us learned all this shit in college, and so we have a tendency to not realize that like this stuff's got to be broken down real basically, because you're dealing with someone who's ideologically just brainwashed to be against it or whatever, and so that's like why I think that these explainer videos are like a really good concept, because like there are people that are like, what do you mean, like landlords that's a job too,
right? And I didn't go to college, so it's like I feel like very blessed almost in that way that like I would have failed out very quickly, but
I did.
It's all, but it's like even to not have like seen that kind of world of academia and like kind of try to like, I would have definitely tried to like fit in, you know what I mean? Like any I think person does, and I think that would have taken a long time for me to unpack and try and figure out. And I stand with Chapo in saying college should be abolished.
Totally.
Who needs it? You know what I mean?
I kind of want to do an episode about college at some point because I kind of got radicalized by going to college and going like, oh, wait a minute.
This is a
fucking
ruse.
bullshit.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because like the all the radical shit that you learn. Like I went to community college and then I went to a liberal arts college, which thankfully I only did for a while. I wish I would have gone there longer, but I was only there for 2 years, which now I'm glad for because I didn't become a total nutcase. Well, I was already one.
TBD.
Which one of us is going to eat each other again?
Who was pitching that?
Well, it's up to God. But like, yeah, all the radical shit, all the simple stuff is packed in this like incomprehensible jargon now, and it's especially happened since like the 80s, since when postmodernism started, and they made academia made culture the domain of political struggle. Because before that, it was like we got to align ourselves with workers. In the 80s, there was fucking air traffic controllers on strike. There's miners on strike. Academics didn't do any of that. Instead, they were let's write about Mork and Mindy and throw a bunch of like psychoanalytic jargon that no one can understand in this, and at the same time they're getting tenure, they're making money from these expensive ass books that no one can afford, and it's this little bubble, and it's not doing anything. Because they're saying like, oh, the left is dead, modernism is dead, like all we have to do is just kind of stare at our navels and we'll pat ourselves on the back for that. And now that's coming apart, thankfully.
Yeah, they're just companies.
Yeah.
Like, pretty much.
Some comedian, I can't remember who this was. I saw a comedian a long time ago just offhandedly do a line in his act about how, like, you go to college and you have to write an essay about how birthdays are racist or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's pretty much what college is. Yeah. Some shit that wouldn't hold water outside of that room at all, Right. It's a complete fucking stretch, and you're being told it's like, this is the most important.
Well, it's also masturbatory. It's like it's like learning for the sake of learning to be like a learned person, and it's like you're not gaining knowledge in order to like empower your worldview or like empower you politically or as a worker. It's just like I know all these things now. Like I read Marx as just like a book, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's not
interesting thing to consider.
Yeah, it's not like contextualized in any like meaningful way.
I straight up knew a guy who was a Marxian. Who he wouldn't call himself a Marxist, but he applied all of Marx's theorizing about the economy to being a stockbroker. Because, he was a brilliant economist, and you can do that, but it's like, fuck, you kind of defeated the purpose there.
Wow, yeah, that's like kind of a special level of evil. Yeah. It's like it's like playing a Game Genie or something. You're using the code to then cheat. It's fucking weird.
Uh-huh.
How did you get into radical politics?
It was Bernie, man. I was like a lib up to 2016. I like just had no idea that there was like anything beyond like Barack Obama. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And then Bernie ran, and he like talked about like there's an inherent tension between the owners of society and the workers, and it's like, oh, that actually, if you look at the world that way, everything makes a lot more sense, and like all these sort of systems of oppression, like. I worked in liberal kind of film, like documentary too, so it was like very performative. Like you'd do a film about like a refugee family, and it would just be like it would just kind of end in like a very vague, like, crazy, like this is fucked up, but it wouldn't have any sort of like, it wouldn't point you anywhere. And so as a filmmaker, it was like I was trying to also figure out like, how do I, like, what am I just making videos to make videos, and it was so hearing that stuff made a lot of sense. I like volunteered for his campaign, knocking doors and stuff, and then like very quickly, like trying to make money for myself was like, this whole system, like I'm barely getting by. Like I don't understand how like other people who don't have like all these advantages I have are fucking making it. Like this seems insane,
Totally. That is really like a thing about liberalism, is that like, especially if you're looking at the art and media that's produced by liberalism, is it's just ideologically empty.
Yeah, it's like Vice shit where it's like they'll go to Syria and they'll like, it's just shock porn where it's like children starving, and it's like there's no solution because it would actually like challenge the hegemony, And
yeah, Vice is a really good example of it because everything is just like, look at this, wasn't that fucked up?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yes, it was, Vice. What do you think we should do about it? I don't know.
I've heard their biggest online audience is law enforcement.
Wow, I wouldn't be surprised.
I know, it makes sense because it's all like
thrill-seeking,
it's like people with fucking like PTSD who like can't get enough or whatever.
Oh,
like,
yeah, sure,
and they just want
yeah.
to see like fucking
They're
shit getting bombed out.
A good example of like a cultural touchstone. Like, remember when they were like cool? They're very much not cool anymore. But
I mean, Vice Live just got like shut down yesterday too. They're canceling that whole thing.
Yeah, I used to think it was kind of a bad idea that they started like a TV channel instead of a streaming network, because
That was the whole promise of Vice was Shane Smith. So Shane Smith, who's like a total grifter, like set up Vice as essentially a pyramid scheme, right? But like the whole thing, the whole sell was, we're gonna bring millennials back to cable television, which will never fucking happen.
Yeah, why?
And he knew damn well that would never happen. And so I think it was really like he was just trying to make his money and get the fuck out, which he did. You know,
or he like his audience is maybe correctly assessed to be people that are like, well, I guess older millennials, like people that would watch TV. It's just such a weird move to move backwards like that, but it makes sense because, like, Vice is kind of a thing of the past.
He got the paycheck for it, though, basically.
Yeah,
So-
he's out. He's not
okay.
even on the. I think he's on the board still, but he doesn't run the company.
He doesn't.
They just brought in like
those-
media executives to manage it now.
He doesn't intro those documentaries anymore by just sitting in a
Just
chair.
such a
and
narcissist.
staring. I auditioned to play him in a movie one time, and I had to like. I'm not really an actor, but I was like, all right, I'm going to do acting, and like I just fucking spent all week like watching him and trying to learn to talk like him and things like that.
That's a fun
Canadian
research
Jake.
project. But it's also like one of Vice. So Vice was never really founded with any other like core belief system other than like we're gonna be edgy and like punk or whatever that meant.
Yeah.
Kind of, which is a changing window constantly. Like what edgy is, what is punk, you know. And so it's like not only was there no real grounding and like this is where we stand like on the sort of ideological spectrum. They also had a fucking like fascist in their midst. You know what I mean? And like
well,
Gavin
his
McInnes-
idea of edgy was reactionary.
Exactly,
it was kind
right.
of just reacting to whatever, you know, and then inserting his. He really like used a certain camouflage to hide what was just ideological
Hipster camouflage.
racism as like, no, I'm like really cool. It's fucking weird. It's very prescient of like things to come. Although I guess he kind of created a lot of that shit, but he did create a lot of that shit. So that's why I say MeanStevie. What if Vice but good? You know?
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Yeah, it's like what if Vice had was leftist, you know, and like it was also worker owned and didn't pay people $20,000 a year.
Yeah. Yeah, and you didn't need to form unions against.
Dude, and they have an internal advertising agency. Like most places, like I just doing research kind of like on different digital media companies, like they all have internal advertising agencies that like brands will come to them and be like, you all reach young like audiences or whatever. We want to sell Pepsi to young audiences. So they'll literally take that like, you know, like hundreds of thousands of dollars from Pepsi and then do like an ad campaign through Vice and then say it's like this is a sponsored thing through Vice or whatever, and so they'll go to like a Pepsi factory and do it like a normal Vice video but it's sponsored.
Wow, that sucks ass.
Everywhere has that though. BuzzFeed has that. Like, and it's like a lot. Like they even Vice did some shit where they went to Saudi Arabia to talk about how under the new Prince Mohammed bin Salman things are modernizing and shit.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just disgusting. And they pass it off as journalism, and it's fucking disgusting.
I bet Gavin McInnes loves it. That Saudi Arabia is probably his paradise, like high tech, like misogyny.
Mechanized misogyny.
Yeah. I don't know what he's up to these days. The funniest thing about Gavin McInnes is that the most important thing in the world to him is being cool, and he'll never be cool again. He's just has to hang out with like Alex Jones and shit now.
Yeah, he probably hates his Proud Boys. Like, yeah.
We should make a video that's like a Vice spoof. I'll do Shane, I'll intro it, and then we
Did you
visited.
see the documentary Now spoof that
Yeah,
they did?
yeah, yeah.
That was pretty funny. Where they just like all the
Drones?
journalists get
Yeah.
killed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think unless anyone else wants to hit anything before we get out of here, that's pretty much it. We talked about Buttigieg and what it's like enough, I think.
Can I do a plug?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
plug away.
Yeah, please check out means.media. We are on YouTube at youtube.com/meanstv. We have the original Neon Cat video as well on that channel. Thank you, Sarah June.
Oh yeah.
We're currently
Neon Cat is radicalized. I like it.
Yeah, like meme the shit out of them. We're also doing a fundraiser right now, trying to raise money for the actual platform. We have over 1,000 supporters. We've raised over $50,000 so far, but we're trying to raise 500,000. So if you can, please support us in building like worker-owned media.
Cool.
At Andersley here on Twitter. I will be announcing some more dates soon for my solo comedy show Dummy, about the autistic spectrum and how it intersects with eugenics, capitalism, etc. It's going to be doing it a few times in New York and the East Coast, and then back to Edinburgh. So if you're in the UK, please come out in August. You can find a Dummy-solo show on Facebook.
Cool. I'm, feral jokes and everything, that. I haven't been advertising this enough, and I just realized I haven't been because show kind of was light the other night. But Yoko, my live stand-up show at El Cortez in Bushwick, we are bi-monthly right now, I think. I'll push it way harder online so that we can all hang out and get drunk in the top of a Mexican restaurant and watch fucking crazy stand-up and shit. We've had good people in the past. We've had Todd Barry. We had Connor O'Malley. The guy who screams at Howard Schultz. He did my show. You come out and you can see shit like Connor O'Malley. It was fucking tight.
Did he do the bit? Like, was he all bloodied up and shit?
No, man, his act is like live drill, I would describe it as. It's just weird segments where he's kind of screamy, but that bit is like its own isolated thing. Like, I don't think he's doing it on stage or whatever. It's
a jam. It's a total jam.
It's very funny because it's presented with zero context, so it's just an unfolding story. But it's also my guide to the 2020 primaries. I'll vote for whoever he tells me to. So this is now a Howard Schultz podcast, I guess.
He's a good tipper too. I
Connor?
served him once. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Anders. Find me, Anders. Yeah, I think that's probably it. I don't know. Tour dates soon. Patreon for more bonus shit. And thank you for listening and supporting the show. I just remembered it. I saw a good man bomb. I saw a bad man kill. I saw a girl write for Guy Code just to pay the bills. Then you really might know what it's like. It could happen to you. All right, good night. Good night. It's the day. Whatever, fuck it.
Mr. Howard Schultz, I'll do anything to get your fucking ass elected. Please, I want there to be Starbucks president, your first brand president ever. And I want to say that I'm so fucking happy that everyone get puppuccinos and everybody get cappuccino. Only no coffee man can stop the Kofifi guy.